I get asked about fantasy stuff, so this is about as close as it's going to get. And since it's a fantasy topic, I went with wearing this shirt for the first time in a video that I've done on the channel. As far as I can remember, I haven't worn my gray cross-check jersey in a video. Not the Penguins one. I know I've worn the Bruins one before, but all right. So going over numbers, here's how this past year worked. And some of these are cases of players just getting hot or just going cold, and there's no carryover into this year. Some of them are harbingers of stay away or a sign this guy's arrived. Arvidsson went from a 0.67 points per game average pre-All-Star break to 0.94 post-All-Star break. I think where he ended up, I think that's probably where he ends up this year too. I think he played extremely well after the All-Star break. He's one of my favorite players 2 years ago as well, and he's done nothing to dissuade me from finding him one of my favorite players. Athanasiou was 0.61 before the All-Star break, 0.30 after. But the entire Red Wings team was crap after the All-Star break. So I don't necessarily have Athanasiou dropping this year. In fact, I would say he can keep up that 0.61 points per game, and I think he could be in for a breakthrough. Cam Atkinson went from 0.42 to 1.00. Now, the minimum difference before I was going to put it on the board was 0.29. Because I thought, you know what, I don't want this to just be, well, this guy had a good 4 or 5 games. And also, it had to be a big sample size. So if a guy only played 10 games before the All-Star break and scored 1 point, I didn't pay any attention to that or put it on the board. Atkinson definitely played better after the All-Star break, and I think while he's not a point-a-game player, I think this was closer to the real him than the 0.47. Josh Bailey, I was asked, to name a bust kind of thing, and in a video I did a couple days ago, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll put Bailey on the board, and here's why. So now I can explain. He had a 1.17 points per game average before the All-Star break, 0.57 after. Combined with the departure of Tavares, I expect Bailey to go back to basically his standard numbers throughout his career, which would be, 45, 50 points kind of thing. Bjugstad went from 0.47 to 0.77 because Florida, on the whole, played much better after the All-Star break than before it. Jesper Bratt, this could be of concern. He went from 0.64 pre-All-Star break to 0.19 after. So as the games got tougher, he had a harder time fighting through it. On the upside, he's a rookie. Rookies can have that happen and get better the next time through. Dadonov was the next one on the list. Went from 0.74 to 1.03 after. So after the All-Star break, Dadonov, another one of these Florida guys who got much, much better. Max Domi, if you're a Canadiens fan, went from 0.42 to 0.75. So he definitely got better after. Now, we can still discuss about the fact that Max Domi has had problems scoring goals, and that's true. But getting points, he's okay at. Pierre-Luc Dubois. So there was a couple of comments about my Columbus season preview, or where I was talking, whenever I talk about Dubois, that, well, he's not proved himself to be a number one center yet, but he has. 0.45 points per game pre-All-Star break, 0.79 after. And he had 25 points in his last 30 games. I really believe he's arrived, he's in, he's set. The one that surprised me is Duchene. Matt Duchene, before the All-Star break, 0.53 points per game. After the All-Star break, this is all in Ottawa, 0.97. So if Duchene can come into this season for Ottawa and produce at almost a point a game, if he can reproduce that and get into the 78, 79 point range, Ottawa might have a better chance. Gallagher. Gallagher went from 0.53 to 0.85, which is pretty darn good, and shows that Gallagher had a good run in that after the All-Star break. Where it's different with Gallagher than it is with some others is most of the magazines I've been reading don't expect Gallagher to replicate a 30-goal season again. They see him more as a 20-goal player than 30, and I agree with that as well. Johnny Gaudreau went from a 1.16 average to 0.87 after the All-Star break. So 0.87 is respectable, but he definitely lost something post All-Star break compared to where he was pre-All-Star break. Kevin Hayes for the Rangers got better after the All-Star break, went from 0.45 to 0.75. So Hayes, maybe there's some hope that this coming season he can keep up the 0.75 all the way through and get about 60 points. Danton Heinen, and I've mentioned this before, so here's the numbers. He went from 0.77 pre-All-Star break to 0.41 after. Danton Heinen, as the season went along, it seemed like he was struggling more and more, and right into the playoffs. And it does give me some concern. Yes, young kid, could absolutely power through, but I do have some concerns with Heinen because he wasn't really projected to be a top 6 player. Maybe fourth line, third line, sure, but it felt to me like he was overachieving as that season wore on. An interesting note with Florida is Jonathan Huberdeau, who went from 1 point per game before the All-Star break to 0.63 after. So while everybody in Florida is playing better and scoring more, Huberdeau is scoring less. Doesn't mean he wasn't playing well, and that's, a sign that his game is more than just offense. But it's interesting to note. Matthias Janmark of the Dallas Stars went from 0.54 to 0.23. Boone Jenner of Columbus went from 0.29 to 0.61. So Jenner, who has been down for a couple of years after the All-Star break, showed he's still an NHL level player and potentially could be in for at least a decent season this year. Tyler Johnson of the Tampa Bay Lightning went from 0.79 down to 0.36. So Johnson, and again, with Tampa and with ice time being as it is, it could just be a matter of him losing ice time. But, it's one of those things to keep track of. Nazem Kadri went from 0.57 to 0.87. So Kadri got better as the season went along, which makes sense because he plays such a tough game. And he is one of those guys who wears the opponents down. He's not a guy who gets worn down so much. So it would make sense to me that he's a better scorer in the second half of the season than the first. Alex Kerfoot with Colorado went from 0.71 down to 0.32. Concerning, but again, as a rookie, it kind of happens. There's a rookie wall that they talk about, and once they hit that wall, it falls off. And I understand that you can make that argument with Heinen as well. No argument there at all. It was the amount. It was the fact that Heinen dropped down to a 0.41. And yes, Kerfoot dropped below that. And yet, to me, it feels like Kerfoot has a higher ceiling than Heinen. We'll see. Absolutely, we'll see. Kuznetsov went from 0.92 to 1.27. So, Evgeny Kuznetsov got better as the season went along, which could be foretelling an actually better season from this coming year than a lot of people are giving him credit for. So, if you think 1.27, what we saw after the All-Star break, is Kuznetsov, and that after the Stanley Cup win, that's not going to affect his numbers negatively, he might be a guy you want to take early in your pool. Lucic. Lucic is one of the most concerning of the bunch. Goes from 0.61 to 0.12. 0.12. Scored in the single digits after the All-Star break. Absolute, complete, total, unmitigated disaster for Lucic. Now Malkin, right below him, goes from 1.11 pre-All-Star to 1.48 post-All-Star. And yet anytime I talk about how amazing Malkin is, the first thing I hear is, well, yeah, but he's got Crosby. Notice Crosby's not on the board here. Crosby was pretty consistent through the year. Malkin just turned it on after the All-Star break. So it's worthy of note here. And again, everybody knows I like Malkin a lot. If anybody asks why Ovechkin isn't on the board, it's because he was consistent this past season. This is just showing first and seconds before and after All-Star break where guys really went up or really went down. Mitch Marner goes from 0.67 to 1.13. Now, I don't think Marner's going to score at 1.13 points per game this coming season, but he's not going to score at 0.67 either. He should be helped by the addition of Tavares because of the fact that either way he's going to have a fantastic center, and whether they put him with Matthews or they put him with Tavares, and everybody's got all kinds of theories about where he's going to end up, but I don't think we really know because we haven't seen them in games yet. Marner's going to score because he's going to be with a center who can score. Speaking of which, Matthews went from 0.90 before the All-Star break to 1.24 after the All-Star break. Matthews after the All-Star break was pretty darn solid for a Toronto Maple Leafs team that had a much better season than people seem to remember, and I think it's because of that 7-game loss against Boston that I think it gets remembered as being a lot worse than what it was. Connor McDavid went from 1.10 pre-All-Star break to 1.64 after. And that's where Oiler fans got all excited and he should win the Hart Trophy. And then when he wasn't nominated, he ended up being 5th in the voting, which is fine with me. Fifth is it's good. It just shows that yes, he's the best player in the league, but you can't argue him as MVP of the league when the team missed the playoffs. It is hard to make that bridge work. McDavid, though, absolutely the best scoring talent in the league, and it's only a matter of time before he scores an entire season at around 1.5 points per game. I think 120, 125 points is well within reach for this kid. Nemesnikov went from 0.80 pre-All-Star break to 0.28 after the All-Star break. If you're a Ranger fan, you should be mildly concerned. I think that what Tampa got back in that trade is going to benefit them greatly, and I do wonder if Nemesnikov is going to be capable of taking that next step forward, and we'll see. I like Nemesnikov a lot, but we'll see. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, of course, everybody knows he went to Connor McDavid's line. He went from 0.67 pre-All-Star break to 1.06 post-All-Star break. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see Nugent-Hopkins end up again at center on his own line, only because if you have down the middle McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, that's a pretty solid top 3 right there. And I know Nugent-Hopkins had good chemistry with Connor, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that change again. Kyle Palmieri went from 0.55 to 0.85. Artemi Panarin went on a roll. He went from 0.80 to 1.34 after the All-Star break. And if you're a Columbus fan, you have to ask yourself, what kind of Panarin's going to be out on the ice for us if there isn't a move made before the season started? Is he going to be less motivated? What are we going to be looking at? Zach Parise, for all of his foibles, goes from 0.30 to 0.66. So Parise played actually pretty darn well after the All-Star break. More like what they thought they were getting when they signed him than the injury-filled seasons they've had to deal with since. But again, we'll see if Parise can score at this pace throughout a season and stay away from the 0.30. Nolan Patrick. I've given credit to Dubois. Let's give credit to Patrick. He went from 0.23 to 0.64. So 0.64 after the All-Star break. I think if he can keep that up, score about 50, 55 points this year, I think he's in good shape. It's going to be an interesting season for Philly because we all know that they've got a solid blue line. Their offense looks pretty darn good. If Patrick can round into form, they could be a threat. As long as their goaltending holds up, they could be a threat. Perreault in Winnipeg goes from 0.76 to 0.31. And it's concerning because he's not a rookie. And which player is he closer to, the 0.76 pre-All-Star break or 0.31 after the All-Star break? The good news is, since it's Winnipeg, they have tons of talent. Puljujarvi, and this is one of those red flags, goes from 0.47 to 0.15. It's not Puljujarvi's first year in the pros. He looked decent and then he looked lost, and there's some concern with that. And then you've also got to think of this. We're expecting Yamamoto to come in and get a job this year. Well, he could take Puljujarvi's. He could take his spot. And we because Ty Ratty is kind of expected to be in the lineup this year, and it could be Puljujarvi that finds himself out. And if Puljujarvi struggles again this season and doesn't get his legs under him, he may find himself getting traded out of Edmonton. Sam Reinhart went from 0.41 pre-All-Star break to 0.91 post. The 0.91 is why Buffalo fans and some others have been saying, Reinhart looks great. The pre-All-Star, which was 0.41, is why there's still people calling him a bust. And I don't think he's a bust. I don't think he's a superstar. I think that he is likely going to settle into being a pretty solid scoring number 2 center. I think 60, 65 points is solid. I think 70 is possible. I don't know that he's ever going to be a superstar, but he doesn't really have to be because they've got Eichel and they've got some other guys who are pretty good. Braden Shen, he had a 0.98 points per game average before the All-Star break. Dropped to 0.65 after. I don't think that the career year Shen had, I don't think he's going to be able to equal it again this year because that's why they're called career years. And the other concerning one here, if you're a St. Louis fan, and it's only mildly concerning, is Jaden Schwartz going from 1.13 pre-All-Star to 0.77 after. And I understand that there's injuries, there's other things in there that could have affected his play and his points per game numbers. But Schwartz and Shen both dropping. It's of mild concern, but St. Louis has added so much in the offseason that it's only a concern if you're thinking about drafting them really early. I would avoid Shen. I would probably draft Schwartz before Shen. I probably wouldn't draft Shen too early because of that 0.65. It would kind of scare me off a little bit. Riley Smith, one of those overachievers in Vegas, went from 0.75 pre-All-Star break to 1.26 after. Now, I don't see him as being a 1.26 points per game kind of guy, but you know what? He played pretty darn well. John Tavares went from 1.14 down to 0.84. What's interesting with this is, here's Matthews and Marner getting better after the All-Star break, and Tavares falling apart. Again, Tavares falls down to 0.84, and the Islanders drop way out of the race. Islander fans will say, that's right, when the games get tough, Tavares disappears. Other people would say, well, Tavares' numbers went down because his team wasn't any good. There you go. Now, on defense, I only found 4 who qualified as having had that massive rise or fall. Byfuglien went from 0.50 to 0.84, so he gets better as the season goes along. Ekblad joins other Florida Panther players, going from 0.34 to 0.63. So if Ekblad can score at a rate of 0.63 this year, get into that 50-point range, he's going to turn some heads and could be another reason why Florida ends up making the playoffs. Klingberg went from 0.96 before the All-Star break to 0.59 after. Klingberg was interviewed recently about the new coach, Montgomery, in Dallas, and he's excited about what's going on in Dallas. The coach went over to Sweden to visit him, and he's very excited about this, and he's all excited about the season. And this isn't all that unusual, but getting Klingberg fired up is important because if he can maintain that 0.96 all year, Dallas has themselves a premier offensive player. Torrey Krug of Boston went from 0.65 pre-All-Star to 0.94 after the All-Star break. Krug started the season as a complete and total disaster, and by the end of the year, most of that was forgotten, and fans were talking about how great he was. I'm a big Torrey Krug supporter. I'm a big fan of his, and yet, in all honesty, I don't know that I buy the 0.94. I think he's better than 0.65, but I do think now that he gets overrated somewhat. And it's weird because he is one of my favorite players, but I do think there are some who overrate him slightly. Not a lot, but slightly. And we'll see which side of the fence he ends up on this year. The other things that I'm going to be looking at, and I'm going to try to find you guys some value, I'm going to look at players who didn't get power play points last year, and players who relied almost entirely on power play points and try to get that organized on the board. So you guys can see the ones that really rely on special teams and the ones that don't need special teams at all, which means that they should be reliable to get you your points, or they could be value additions in case they start getting more special teams time this year. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And hey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're just browsing your way through and you happen upon this video. I'll talk to you again soon.